Have you ever noticed how easy it is to become someone else without realizing it? Not physically, but psychologically. Quietly. One day you laugh differently. You speak differently. You start hiding certain opinions, suppressing certain emotions. And eventually, you wake up inside a personality that doesn't fully feel like yours anymore. And the disturbing part is, most people never notice it happening. Because identity theft isn't always external. Sometimes your environment steals you from yourself. Because somewhere along the way, people stopped becoming who they are and started becoming what keeps them accepted. Think carefully about your own life. How many opinions are actually yours? And how many were absorbed from culture, social media, fear, comparison, or the desperate need to belong? Most people think manipulation looks aggressive, but the most powerful manipulation happens gently, through repetition, through loneliness, through algorithms, through validation, because the human brain would rather feel accepted than truthful, and that changes everything. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what if becoming yourself is actually one of the hardest psychological battles a human being can experience? Because becoming yourself requires uncertainty, isolation, confusion, and disappointing people. Most people never do it. Instead, they build personalities optimized for survival. The agreeable version, the confident version, the productive version, the emotionally detached version, the funny version, the successful version. And after enough years, they no longer know where the performance ends and where they begin. Psychologists call this identity diffusion, a fragmented sense of self shaped by comparison, pressure, emotional suppression, and imitation. And modern life accelerates it. Because for the first time in history, you are exposed to thousands of personalities every single day. Influencers, celebrities, perfect lifestyles, perfect confidence, perfect bodies, perfect opinions. And unconsciously, you begin editing yourself to survive socially inside that environment. You become psychologically shapeless. Not because you're fake, but because human beings learn through imitation. You slowly become what you constantly consume. And most people never stop long enough to ask, who am I underneath all this noise? That question sounds simple until you genuinely try answering it. Because once the distractions disappear, once nobody is watching, many people encounter something deeply uncomfortable. Emptiness. A strange psychological void. And people will do almost anything to avoid that void. They scroll endlessly, work constantly, seek validation, perform confidence, chase status, obsess over productivity. Not because these things fulfill them, but because silence forces confrontation. And confrontation threatens the false self. There was a psychological experiment where participants sat alone in a room without stimulation. The only available activity was pressing a button that delivered a painful electric shock. And disturbingly, many participants chose shocking themselves rather than sitting alone with their own thoughts. Think about how terrifying that is. Some people would rather experience pain than experience themselves. Because beneath distraction, there's often unresolved identity. This is why loneliness feels psychologically violent for some people. It's not just the absence of others. It's the sudden absence of distraction from yourself. And in that silence, all the suppressed questions return. Who am I? What do I actually want? Why does success feel empty? Why do I feel emotionally disconnected? Why does life feel performative? And maybe the darkest realization of all. What if the life you built was never truly yours? Existential philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, described something called bad faith, the tendency for humans to lie to themselves to escape the anxiety of freedom. Because genuine freedom is terrifying. If nobody defines you, then you become responsible for defining yourself, and responsibility is heavy. So instead, people surrender identity to systems. Careers become identities. Relationships become identities. Political beliefs become identities. Trauma becomes identity. Success becomes identity. Because certainty feels safer than self-discovery. And eventually, people become trapped inside roles they never consciously chose. You see this everywhere. The person who hates their job, but no longer knows who they are without it. The overachiever terrified that rest would expose their emptiness. The emotionally cold person, using detachment as protection. The agreeable person unable to say no because rejection feels catastrophic. These aren't personalities. They're survival adaptations. And survival adaptations eventually become prisons. The terrifying thing about psychological prisons is that they often feel normal from the inside, until one day, something breaks. Burnout, heartbreak, failure, loss, and suddenly, the identity you built stops working. That's why certain moments feel emotionally catastrophic. Because they don't just hurt, they dismantle structure. A breakup doesn't only remove a person. Sometimes it removes the identity attached to them. Failure doesn't only damage pride. Sometimes it destroys the illusion you built your life around. And beneath that collapse, people often encounter a horrifying realization. I don't actually know who I am. But strangely, that moment may also become the beginning of freedom. Because identity collapse can become identity discovery. Only after illusion breaks does truth finally have space to appear. Friedrich Nietzsche believed humans suffer because they attach themselves to fragile meanings. And when those meanings collapse, so does the person attached to them. But he also believed destruction was necessary for transformation. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. And maybe that's what people misunderstand about psychological suffering. Not all suffering is meaningless. Some suffering is revelation. Some suffering exposes the distance between your performed self and your authentic self. That's why certain breakdowns feel strangely clarifying. The fake confidence collapses. The distractions stop working. The performance becomes exhausting. And suddenly, you begin seeing life with terrifying honesty. You notice how much of society runs on validation addiction, how many conversations feel performative, how many people secretly hate themselves, how often confidence is compensation. And once you see these patterns clearly, it becomes difficult to participate in reality the same way again. But there's another side to this. Because once people lose authentic identity, they become easier to manipulate. A person disconnected from themselves becomes desperate for direction, and desperate people are easy to control. That's why modern systems thrive on insecurity. If people feel incomplete, they consume more. If they feel unattractive, they buy more. If they feel insignificant, they perform more. And social media intensifies this fragmentation because platforms reward exaggerated versions of humanity. Outrage, vanity, certainty, hyperproductivity, constant stimulation. Slow thinking doesn't go viral. Nuance doesn't go viral. Inner peace doesn't go viral. Emotional intensity does. Which means modern culture slowly trains people to become louder versions of themselves. Not deeper, just louder. And eventually, people stop asking, "Is this true?" and start asking, "Will this be validated?" That shift quietly changes identity itself. Because once validation becomes your compass, you lose the ability to hear yourself. And maybe that's why so many people feel emotionally fragmented today. Too many opinions, too many comparisons, too many personas, too much noise, and beneath all of it, a nervous system desperately searching for stillness. But stillness is difficult now. Every uncomfortable emotion gets interrupted by stimulation. Sadness becomes scrolling. Anxiety becomes consumption. Loneliness becomes attention-seeking. Boredom becomes dopamine hunting. And over time, people lose emotional endurance. They become psychologically dependent on escape. But here's the paradox. The more you avoid yourself, the stranger you become to yourself. And eventually, that distance creates suffering. You can feel it in certain moments. Late at night, after endless scrolling, after achieving goals you thought would fulfill you, a strange emptiness appears. Because distraction can silence the self temporarily, but it cannot replace it. And maybe that's why some externally successful people still feel internally disconnected. Because achievement without identity creates hollowness. You can build an impressive life around a stranger and still feel empty living inside it. That's why philosophers valued solitude, not isolation, solitude. Because solitude interrupts social hypnosis. When you spend enough time alone without distraction, something unusual begins happening. The performances weaken. You notice which thoughts are genuinely yours, which desires feel authentic, which fears were inherited. And slowly, something begins returning. Not confidence, not motivation, presence. You stop reacting automatically. You stop shape-shifting for approval. You stop performing personalities to survive socially. And maybe that's what becoming yourself actually is. Not creating a perfect identity, but removing everything that was never truly you to begin with. Because the authentic self is rarely created. It's uncovered, buried underneath conditioning, fear, comparison, expectation, and years of pretending. And the truth is, most people spend their entire lives running from themselves, distracted, busy, validated, stimulated. Because confronting your real self is terrifying. It means admitting some dreams were inherited. Some ambitions came from insecurity. Some relationships were performances. Some versions of you only existed to avoid rejection. But if you can survive that realization, if you can sit in silence long enough without escaping, something strange begins happening. You stop needing the world to constantly confirm your existence. You stop measuring your worth through productivity, attention, status, or validation. And maybe for the first time in your life, you begin hearing your own voice clearly. Not the voice built by algorithms, not the voice built by fear. Your voice, the one that existed before the world, told you who you needed to become in order to be accepted. Because the most dangerous person is not the loudest person or the richest person. The most dangerous person is the one who no longer needs permission to be themselves. The person who can sit alone without escaping. The person who understands their own mind deeply enough that manipulation stops working on them. That kind of person becomes difficult to control. And maybe that's why the modern world works so hard to keep people distracted from themselves. Because a person who truly knows who they are cannot be easily programmed by fear. So if lately you've felt disconnected, emotionally fragmented, lost, maybe your mind isn't broken. Maybe part of you is simply exhausted from performing for a world that never truly saw you. Maybe this emptiness isn't the end of your identity. Maybe it's the collapse of everything false. And maybe that collapse is necessary. Because sometimes, you have to lose every artificial version of yourself before you can finally meet the real one.